All right, well, here we are, back at another podcast. I appreciate you making the time out of your schedule
Likewise,
to be
man.
here.
Likewise.
It's an exciting time at the moment because obviously last year you've grown the podcast to a really popular level. You've had some amazing success there, and I'm sure you've learnt a thing or two.
I have.
And that's partly the reason that I wanted to catch up with you and learn a little bit more from you, because you've interviewed so many people in the real estate finance space, and you've had some incredible successful people on there. I'm curious to know, has your definition of success shifted, and what does success mean to you, and why do you think that this idea of success is so popular at the moment?
Made a lot of deep, thought out questions, and to answer that quickly, yes, my perception of success has changed quite substantially through my time doing the podcast. And I'd say what it's given me over everything is the ability to look over the fence and see what versions of success looks like in different people's lives, which then gives me the capacity then to reflect on what success looks like for me. And I feel now, from my perspective, success is an inside job. So for me, I view success as what does Daniel want to achieve and why? And success also on the other side is not what do I want to achieve, but what do I want to embody? How do I want to be? So there's two parts for me that equal success. It's the accomplishment of something, and then there's also just the being and the presence and how do I want to show up. And mate, it's like you said, like I'm pretty sure it's been about a year now since we last caught up. And through that last year, there's been a lot of highs and lows and opportunities to learn from so many highly, what we'd call successful people, and just the mirror that you get shown back of you in terms of if you go down this path, not saying any path's right or wrong, but you could go down path A. Path A, if you follow these series of habits, rituals, beliefs, will yield this end result. And that's what that path looks like. And you get a short torch shown on it. Then you could go to the next guy who's got path B, C, D. And then you start to see that a lot of these people have similar paths. And you could maybe categorize, out of all the people I've interviewed, there may be, say, 10 paths. Out of 100 people, there's probably about 10 similar journeys you'd embody. And so you see that there's patterns to success and patterns to behavior, beliefs, and these patterns give you the ability to manifest and ultimately design a life that you would like to live. But in summary, the last 12 months has just given me clarity that there is no right or wrong outcome, meaning I may think success is to make $1 million in a year, or I may think success is to make $500,000 a year and travel the world in between. There's no right or wrong. What makes it more supportive or unsupportive is, does it align with you as an individual? So for me, it's given me greater clarity in terms of what outcomes do I want to potentially experience in my journey of life, and gave me more clarity on what they are. And because I've seen so many different blueprints and habits and patterns of success, I can then start to figure out how I can, I guess, get to my desired outcome faster and more efficient.
I love that. So one thing you said in there, which I found pretty interesting, was the key words was started designing your own life. What happened when you started designing your own life?
It's a great question, because the idea of creating a life by design sounds phenomenal, sounds like bliss, sounds creative, fun, inspiring, which it is. But the other part of that is the change to create a life by design, which can embody things like isolation, second guessing, overwhelmment, frustration, uncertainty. And so for me, in my experience over the last however many years, trying to become more independent towards building a life by design, you start to embody this journey, which has both sides of the equation, both sides of the coin. You know, both the mixed emotions of uncertainty and also the positive moments of manifestation and creating your own desired outcome. So for me, it was an interesting journey that we get caught in. I guess the beauty of life is we tend to put a desired outcome forward and we stick on that desired outcome, and we can often forget that the path to get there can be filled with both positive and negative experience, or not to use positive or negative, but just experiences that we may view at the time as overwhelming or fulfilling.
But coming back to like the people that you've had on the podcast, right?
Yeah.
Was there one question that you asked most people that kind of shaped your perspective of success?
Yeah. So I'll give it to you from my thought process to how I would understand when I was interviewing somebody. So the first thing I want to understand when I was interviewing somebody is, what's my intrinsic desire of curiosity to want to interview them? So that's really important part, because it would not necessarily mean I'd have a specific question, but more, what is it about this person's life that reflects something to me which sparks a desire of achievement and a desire of curiosity? So for example, looking at yourself, what is it about Lincoln that creates a desire of curiosity? Well, Lincoln's in phenomenal shape. He's got a good tan. He's got some cool tattoos. What would be my first question to want to understand with you is like, hey, Link, tell me a bit about the story behind that tattoo. What that does is that I'm curious naturally, and that's a story in of itself, and it tells me a bit about your own spiritual journey, your own conscious progression, your own psychology around how you view success, or what are the hardships you've gone through. What does that tattoo represent? So for me, the key questions are about, I want to know how somebody thinks, because obviously for me, the podcast was about understanding success, but people create success through their beliefs, their habits, and their rituals. So what are Lincoln's beliefs that equated to his success? Well, me understanding why you got that too gives me an understanding of your beliefs, your patterns and routines. Lincoln, you're in phenomenal shape. Tell me a bit about what training or nutrition you do. Gives me an understanding of your patterns. So for me, the questions I would ask would be, first, them to have to be out of curiosity, or you reflect a desire in me. If you didn't have a desire, if you didn't reflect a desire in me or curiosity, the podcast wouldn't be as effective from my perspective. I wouldn't have enjoyed it. I wouldn't have had the same energetic exchange. Sure, listeners may have got value, but for me, having a set question wasn't the answer. It was, how do I get deep into your psyche? Who is Lincoln on a soul level? That's what I wanted to know, and that would then reflect back to me the blueprint of success, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Do you feel like from having the podcast, do you feel like you did get to know these individuals on a soul level?
It gives you the opportunity to look into somebody's life. Gives you the perspective. It gives you, because I'm face to face, I can read multiple things besides just your language. I can read your body language. I can read your energy. I can read how you feel. I can read multiple things. So although you may have a mask on about what you'd like to project, I can get behind the mask because I'm in your presence. So it does give you an intimate understanding of somebody. But one of the good things with the podcast is that we had conversations on and off air, and then we can develop a relationship like yourself and I. We had a podcast in Bali, but we've had 12 months of friendship and energy exchange outside of that to get an understanding of each other on a deeper level. So the podcast was a great way to initiate rapport. It's a great way to create a balanced environment whereby there's no one higher or low. I guess it creates an environment where I have your attention and you have mine. You don't view me as something. It creates an opportunity for exchange. Like if I was to call you and say, Link, do you want to catch up if you didn't know me and I said, Link, I'd love to catch up for a coffee and pick your brain, versus, hey, Link, I'd love to get you on a podcast and understand what you have to share, you're more likely to want to do the podcast. So it created an environment to get in the door, and then from in the door, we could build rapport organically. So yes, it gave me a deep understanding of a person.
But yeah, understand that, but do you feel like because you're very good at that, like you naturally are
Yeah.
reading people, you're very empathetic, curious, inquisitive, enthusiastic, like you have all the traits to be able to build rapport very quickly.
Yeah.
And as you said, you're reading body language, like, you know, it's a skill, right? But I can understand, like, these people that you had on the podcast, I'm curious, was like when you said like get behind the facade, do you feel like there was a facade for the majority of people? Do you feel like
yeah,
it was
so-
was it authentic is what I'm sort of understanding?
There are people that enable themselves to be more authentic earlier than others. Some have masks that require you to chip away at faster. And your ability as the podcast, I learned this skill. It's a skill. My ability to help you remove your barriers was part of my job. So it was two parts. It was you have the natural withdrawal to want to have a mask, and my ability to help you remove that mask and open up. So it was two parts. But some people had higher walls that were stronger than others that had more like less walls, didn't care. And there were also guests where we'd have a podcast, then post-production, there were guests that really wanted everything edited to be a specific way, wanted to cut out what they said. The mask came back on. And then there were people that said, mate, whatever I said is what I said, post whatever you like. So it was interesting to observe that. And I would say there was a direct correlation between somebody's ego, what we view as ego or maybe a little bit of self-centered, a little bit more of the limelight, materialism, that type of personality trait would have more of a barrier and would be more meticulous with the post-production than others that were a bit more authentic, free-flowing, still abundant, but had a more holistic, viewed life in unison. Everyone was a part of each other rather than I am here for my self-service.
It's pretty cool. Like, it's pretty interesting to be able to be faced like this moment right now, even, you know,
Yeah.
we're completely present with each other, like aware of what sounds are going on, but our nervous systems, like they
Yeah.
have to be in this one spot,
Yeah.
you know, and it's like, it's an instant wall breaker, you know, like
Massive.
everything shines through. So it's amazing. I mean, you've done like a crash course of, emotional intelligence, and you know, it's almost like a negotiation as well, trying to get things out of people, understand, you know.
Mate, and you know what's funny? Like I've tried to be tried to look back and study it a bit from my own lenses. Like what makes a great conversation is not necessarily the questions you ask. It's actually your ability to hold space. And what does that mean? For me, ability to hold space is to enable you to feel safe and willing to share authentically. And that's the key to a successful podcast or interview. Is not what I ask or what I say, it's how I help you feel.
And do you think, obviously, because there's different styles of podcasts, you know, there's kind of like, at least my experience has been, there's podcasts that are purely on there to teach you something, and then there's more like a natural curiosity that comes from a conversation, and story based, you know, and I believe, you know, you have sort of both.
Maybe it also depends on the guest too. Like some guests that maybe are like an Alex Phillip in the real estate, just because everyone knows him as the best agent. He's somebody you'd have less of a discussion with and more of a, hey, mate, you're at the top of the top. I'm here to learn. And depending on not necessarily somebody's stature and success, but I guess your ability to generate rapport would influence if it was a discussion versus, hey, I'm here to learn.
Do you still feel inspired by the podcast?
I don't get the same inspiration from interviewing agents. I get more of an inspiration interviewing people who I'm naturally curious about. And those people typically are holistic based entrepreneurs. People that are holistic about life, see life as life, not just work or an achievement of one result. I'm very inspired by that. And entrepreneurs typically are ones that are building a life by design. A lot of self-reflection, a very spiritual path and process, in my perspective. So I'm very inspired by people that...
Do you think it's possible to build your business or professional career whilst being on a deep spiritual path?
I think they go hand in hand. The more spiritual, the more aware. Business is a game of awareness and boundaries. spirituality is equally that in my perspective. The more boundaries and the more you believe, the more like to succeed in anything, you need to gain an awareness around what you're doing and upskill yourself. And that is what spirituality is in itself, is like expanding your conscious awareness of reality. But I think, definitely they're not mutually exclusive at all.
At least in the work that I do in Mocha, I see a disconnect between like the business life and the spiritual life. I often get asked, like when I say, on the 4 directions which we've spoken about, mental, emotional, spiritual, physical, like how like checking in with yourself on a spiritual level, how are you feeling? And what do you think the question is that I get asked? What does spirituality even mean?
Yeah.
Because it's a challenging one, especially for people that may not be surrounded by, I wouldn't say more conscious people, but just on spiritual people. Like the common thread is, that's a religion.
Yeah.
But for me, in my journey, it's actually about my alignment to myself and my connectedness to myself, and also connected to, if I'm more connected to myself, I'm more connected to external as well. So the spiritual realm for me is like my identity, my meaning, my purpose, my fulfillment, not just am I attached to a faith or religion. And as you say, it's about the consciousness and your awareness in the reality. I think that's a beautiful, beautiful phrase. However, I still believe that a lot of people, that maybe is still even confusing.
Definitely. I think it's just like, for example, the law of attraction. Some people don't know what it is, but use it. I think business and spirituality are similar in the fact that without being aware, you still are spiritual. You're still using it. But I think there's a lack of awareness around the value of being not necessarily more spiritual, but like we're talking about being more aware, understanding yourself, reflecting, setting boundaries, doing things for your own progression, not because somebody told you this is the path of success.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of people that are on this success train and have achieved material gain, but are disconnected from themselves. I agree, but I think that there are also, irrespectively of if you're aware of that or not, you still are in the game of life, which in itself is a spiritual journey.
And I suppose also just because you're disconnected to yourself doesn't necessarily mean that you may not be spiritual.
Yeah.
For example, I had one client that when we sort of got into this conversation, same answer, I'm not sure what spirituality really means, but in his past was really a gun soccer player. Yeah. And it was almost, I think he was actually professional at one point and had an injury.
Wow.
And I said, what was your experience like as a soccer player? He was like, it was amazing. I felt so passionate. I was like, so like, do you feel like you may have felt something in a spiritual realm then? He goes, maybe, yeah, I could. And I said, well, for me in my sport, when I'm training at the gym, or I'm jiu-jitsu, or I'm surfing, or I'm playing paddle or snowboarding, and I'm in that sense of flow, and that flow gives me a sense of meaning about life, and like, oh my God, this is incredible. That to me is also a spiritual
100%.
A spiritual path.
Mate, 100%.
Being connected to nature and to like progression of whatever it might be, flow, I guess. So it's interesting, that spiritual world, and my mission is to really bring that idea of spirituality to the greater conversation, because I think it's so powerful for one to be able to check in with themselves and actually name it and own it.
100%.
Or actually, and the opposite is true. Like when feeling out of alignment, being able to say, I'm actually not feeling so spiritually connected. There's a wobble there, and then the conversation is, well, why? And what and how? It leads to more depth, and as you speak to before, that depth of awareness is kind of like how we get back into being connected, or at least I get back into being connected. So I love that. So what we're sort of saying is that absolutely in business, you can be spiritually connected, and also professionally successful. Is that right?
Mate, 100%.
I love that.
And what I've come to observe through my experience interviewing all these people is that it's been interesting to see those that are disconnected from the idea of a divine higher intelligence or consciousness, Mother Divine, God, whatever you'd like to give that title, or even yourself, your higher self. Those that are disconnected from the idea of that reality have typically created success out of fear, void-driven behavior, a disconnect, low self-esteem,
How does that manifest?
It manifests through people, for example, operating, doing something which they think they need to do to feel this sense of success. They're not doing things out of passion, enjoyment, abundance, bliss. And you see that manifest in their physical body. How sick and healthy are they? How are they moving towards life or not towards life? How are their relationships, physical, partner, their team? How are they viewed in terms of the workplace or their other colleagues? What's their ability to connect? Like, I really see that and have observed that in people. You can really read like how somebody views themselves by how how they present.
Yeah.
Massively. I'm aware of that now.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're energetic beings at the end of the day.
Mate,
you know,
crazy.
like it's like when Yoda says, you know, the force is strong with you. It's like, it's true. We can sit here and we can feel each other's energy.
Yeah.
Some more than others, depending on how connected they are to us, you know, to themselves. But for me, I feel it immediately. It's actually one of my superpowers, is to be able to feel other people's energies. It's also a shadow of mine because then I feel too much.
Mate,
I start to get sucked into the vortex of other people, and I'm like, oh my goodness, I need to tap out of that. But I think I would love to know, like, it's interesting, right? How can someone tell when they are, I mean, from your perspective and what you've understood, how do you discern between someone that is disconnected from their spiritual self or connected?
So it's a good question. I'll share from my experience how I've got to the stage I am where I have this awareness. I've done a lot of practice to develop an awareness, whether it be active forms of meditation like physical trainings, a sport, marathons, CrossFit, weights, or it could be actually meditating on 10-day meditation retreats like Vipassana.
How good are they, by the way?
Phenomenal. Highly recommend it. And so I've developed an awareness through different modalities, tools. I've also dabbled in plant medicine and ceremonies, which we can touch on. And this has given me through going through these processes and having this awareness with my own self, the deeper you go internally on yourself, the more perceptive you are to others in their journey because you've been there yourself. And so how does somebody develop their awareness? I've developed mine through going through different. I've made it a focus to understand myself and develop myself to get an awareness, so then I can then perceive that with others.
So just coming back to when you started designing your own life.
Yeah.
It sounds like the spiritual path was deeply important for you.
Massively.
Was there a reason that it became so important? Like, how did you know, like, oh, I've got to develop my spiritual side?
So for me, it was me developing my spiritual side was a manifestation of filling a void. My dad passed away when I was 7, and from there, life was a very turbulent experience from a young age, whereby I had this crutch. I had my subconscious was programmed in certain ways. I had manifested certain experiences with health, with.
Do you want to speak to what they may look like? It might be helpful for some others.
Sick PT. I was sick throughout my childhood, always sick. I had PTSD as a kid. I wouldn't eat certain foods. I had very different behaviors at times. I had frustration, anger, different bodies, and that was just, I had multiple things occur, not just losing my dad, but using that as a catalyst so that people get some perspective. I was on this journey of coming back to myself, like, you know, you have this disconnection, what it feels like with life and love and God, you know, like how can you feel like you've been let down at such a young age? Like, I'm a 7-year-old growing up without a father. How does that happen? And then the financial pressures that come with that for mom, and she was sick, and then what if you lose both your parents, and all that builds up, and that then influences your psychology and what you focus on and what success looks like to you at that point in time and what you feel like you need to achieve to feel safe and secure. Like, a lot of my desire to obtain success was actually just a result of me wanting to feel safe, secure, not worrying about mum passing, having a roof over her head, you know, having friends come over and they can have a piece of fruit because mum's not stressed about paying. Like, that for me I was so driven to make financial success because of my situation. But the more I've tried to create success out of void-driven behaviors of fear, you feel the resistance of that path, and it's so grinding and difficult, and you push, and it's like force momentum. But on that path, I was like aware of, it's because there's so much force against you. I had an awareness around that. And it was like, there's got to be another way. There's got to be ways to improve and tweak. And through my process of meeting this resistance, I was stepping outside to understand myself. Why am I thinking and feeling this way? I'm getting all these sensations of overwhelming emotions that I don't know how to control or manage, or, this cybernetic loop of like and based on that, it put me on this spiritual path where I invested into understanding my human biology, like what makes me, why do I think what I do, how do I have these emotions, how do I potentially control or influence. And that path is what put me on the spiritual path. And mate, it's beautiful. It's the path to be. It is life and everything. And the deeper I go on the spiritual path, the less value I put on what I thought I needed the success to be, to feel safe and secure. I can feel that without achieving anything on the spiritual path. But what you find on the spiritual path, when you move away from this force momentum, you learn the ability of flow momentum. And how great is that? But then that's when the magic happens. That's when things just come, flow, podcast, start it, passion, follow bliss. I started a passion. So you hear the people follow your passion. Well, what does that mean? For me, I had the podcast. That was something I was passionate about at the time. It served a purpose for me to network, build relationships, do business, but it was a part of doing business that for me was in alignment. It was my skill set. It was my, like you said, I've got this natural curiosity and skill and empathy. For me, it's one of my gifts. And when I followed that, success naturally came. It was organic. It was easy. It's been a walk in the park. It's not hard at all. Almost like you see people that are professional athletes and it's like, how are they so good?
Yeah.
Just like there might be some people that are guns on cold calling or on the phone. They're just naturally so good, where others fear and hate that whole process. Well, for me, this was just like walking in the park. It
felt natural.
So easy and natural.
Yeah.
And that is what the spiritual path offers when you go down. And spiritual path doesn't mean going to church or going to a religion. It can be having 5 minutes to yourself to meditate. It can be doing active forms of meditation or prayer. It could be observing the breath, coming back to your own awareness, breathing, connecting.
It's one of those things, it's like, it seemed idea that I've heard from clients and myself included that I've been through. It's like, it seems sometimes so hard. It seems hard to sit down and meditate. It seems hard to want to do breath work. It seems hard to go to the gym when we don't feel like it. But often that's for me, like, that's what I find my spiritual self.
Yeah.
In that time sitting in Vipassana, in the meditation hall of Jakarta, in the mountains of Jakarta, in the hall, going, this is hard work.
Fucking oath.
Sitting here for 8 hours and having to meditate and feel the breath on the top of my lip and feel the sensation in my body. I'm like, what on earth is this?
Yeah.
I wanted to leave and do something else, but that ultimately was the work. And I love that the idea of the work is also synonymous for me with spirituality or my spiritual path. But one thing I love what you said, which was, it's, you were once in force, but now it's flow. And this idea of flow, not force, I think is super, super powerful, and that the spiritual path is actually an amplifier.
100%.
And this idea that, at least in my experience, I've spoken to this before, of personal magnetism, where I feel like, and not to be the center of the universe, but things start to revolve around us and then they start to be drawn to us. Just as this conversation, this experience, just as business opportunities, podcasts for you and other people with this idea of success as well. On this journey, right, how... Like I could imagine that there's a world where you're on the spiritual path and you're like, oh my God, I can get all my needs met, feel safe, secure and whatnot on the spiritual path. I don't need anything external, right? I don't need the success. However, I'm sure that there is still some ambition within you.
Definitely.
So has the ambition fell by the wayside, or has it been amplified in a different direction? Or how do you think now about ambition? Because I would love for people that are listening to understand that if one decides to go down the spiritual path, it may not mean having to neglect what you thought success was before either.
Exactly. Like, I believe wholeheartedly that some of the best spiritual practice you can do is make money, is follow your ambition. But what I've experienced is that we have different levels of ambition, and I'm only on the path. Like, I'm not a master at this yet. And so just like when I was younger, I needed to make money to feel safe and secure. I'm sure there's parts of me now that has the same mindset with different things I need to accomplish or achieve, because there's a part of me that's still in fear, like from my childhood or whatever it be. I haven't yet completely liberated, but I am well aware of that and have an understanding of that. And there's a lot that I have liberated from. And so when I have gained a greater level of liberation from things, when you talk about you not needing things to feel those voids, does my ambition still say? I feel that now you can act from your true passions and purpose. You can just be Dan. I can just be the guy that does a podcast. I can just be the guy that buys a few properties, goes for a swim in the morning, hangs out with a mate, gets a juice. I can just be Dan in my full energetic self. And ambition is, like, for me, ambition now is just living day by day, enthusiastic as Dan. Like, having a goal and a future destination is great because it gives us drive, motivation, and this feeling of progression. But if we feel these senses of great emotions now, like, that's also this, like, for me, is a similar equivalent. Like,
yeah, you're kind of like, that is the point.
That is the point, right?
It's to live it in the present rather than
exactly
future pace it in the future.
100%. Like,
that.
So there's parts of my life and my day where I am in that total emotional state. There are other parts where, yeah, I'm still on this ambitious desire and outcome path, and that's cool. And I don't know if life will ever be completely one or the other. And maybe they're not meant to be mutually exclusive or binary, or there's a bit of grey. I'm just on my path. And for me, mate, am I ambitious? Bloody oath. Do I want to achieve things? Bloody oath. Am I going to continue to build success and wealth and freedom and security? Fucking oath. But it's about how I do it in the process to me now, which is the most important thing. How am I showing up each day? Is my pursuit of success impacting my energetic state whereby I'm an arsehole to my partner? If yes, that's not for me. I will pursue my goals and ambitions as hard and as fast and as aggressive and grindy as possible, as long as I'm still in the best state of flow as I can be, where I'm not over 50% of stress regulation. If I start to exceed over 50%, I'm pushing too hard, because it's not worth it. The end result is not what, because like attracts like, and this magnetism, the more I'm out, if I get over that threshold of 50%, I start to attract, manifest thoughts, feelings, emotions, people in my reality that go down a negative spiral. For me, keeping that stress threshold, I will still go. For me to be optimal and efficient, I can be optimal and efficient at up to 50% stress, greater than most people, because of my boundaries and my understanding of energy and what fills my cup, drains my cup. Having these strong boundaries enables me to still be very effective and efficient while still having my threshold of stress level within a healthy space, so that when I show up in my family life, my personal life, my friendship life, I'm still at a decent space. Yeah, there's going to be days where I exceed that 50%. Yeah, there's going to be times where I've got more desires for an outcome and my flow is diminished, but that's just the flow of life. But it's having an awareness and an understanding of that, checking in on yourself. That's what's key for me with my reality.
I can hear that you're passionate about it.
I'm passionate. It's because it's life, mate. Life is life, and we've just got to. There's such a big, because I was caught in it, mate. I was caught in this destination addiction, this void-driven behavior, this having to have this end goal of success because I needed it to feel safe and secure. Where now I'm on a path where what this outcome I desire has changed to what aligns with me, and that is one of the most beautiful things that can happen that has happened to me, and that could happen to you, is being able to be you, not having to be somebody because you're needing to out of necessity to live.
It's very refreshing hearing you say that.
Yeah.
you know.
But it's hard. It's not easy.
No, of course. But that's what that's what we were speaking about before.
Yeah.
You know, like the spiritual path is hard.
It's harder than making money. It's the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, by far. Mate, building a podcast is nothing in comparison. It's literally nothing. It's like going for a walk versus running a marathon. That's the gap.
Yeah, it's like the biggest reward comes from doing the hardest thing.
Yeah. And the spirit, mate, because it's a reflection of yourself. It's putting it up. It's you versus, it's you on you.
So what would it be like if you built your threshold larger so that, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, your capacity
Yeah,
to
because
take
what I heard you say was that, you know, if my stress threshold gets to 50%, then I don't do it. But what would happen if you did allow your threshold to build?
My threshold is so much greater than what it was. My threshold is 10 times what it was 12 months ago. So my capacity to take on a lot in comparison to what I used to is so much greater and be under that 50% threshold because my capacity is a lot greater.
So like, if I hear you correctly, threshold grows, resilience grows. So 50% actually may have been 100% last year.
Correct. Yeah.
So just so people can get a gauge in that. So it's what you're saying is you can still grow and build that up. So it means like maybe in 12 months time, your stress capacity is greater. I think one important note to recognize here, because there is this idea of, I believe it's called hedonic adaptation. And hedonic adaptation is, if I've just sounded it correctly, is the ability to handle stress. However, it's still, the body still feels stress.
Yeah.
And I think that's also something that agents, high performers forget, is that just because you can handle a lot of stress doesn't mean it's actually good for you.
100%.
Right? It's still having a knock-on effect. And it's still, as we like to say, borrowing energy from tomorrow. So I love that. So in the last 12 months, you said the last 12 months has been like the biggest growth for you in the spiritual path. Was there a single event, moment, or time that was kind of like, wow,
Yeah, mate.
there's life before, there's life after.
Yeah, 100%. And that is through the introduction of introducing ceremony and plant medicine into my reality. So the rate of my conscious expansion and my ability to, so let's say what I've done in 10 days meditating Vipassana, I can do in 1 hour with plant medicine in ceremony. So to give you context, sitting for 10 days straight, meditating in your own thoughts, not speaking, eating vegetarian food, you spend how many hours? Let's say 80 hours plus in that 10 days versus an hour with plant medicine had given me the same depth of experience and stress on the body to progress, just like training a muscle. So it was the most efficient way for me to expand consciously, energetically, and rejuvenate.
Yeah, you've used that word rejuvenate before with me. Love to touch on that. So how did you know that you were ready for this, and how did you know that was on your path?
So for me, it was let's say called. You know, people say I was called for it. It aligned. That happened with my experience. It was just, you have this innate intuition and knowing. For me, it was there. I was always drawn to it. And because I had lost my dad at a young age, I still felt there were parts of my subconscious being that needed to be healed and just deep rooted.
How do you just feel that?
I had this, for me, this is my experience.
Yeah.
I just had that knowing.
Interesting.
Yeah. Just like you've got a cut on your arm and you know you've got a cut, you know, like I don't have to tell you, you know, you can see it, but even if you couldn't see it, you can feel this.
You just felt it.
I felt that there was internal surgery that needed to be done, and I was looking for the tools to go internally and do the surgery on myself. And so for me, ceremony is like a school of consciousness, but it's also a place to do deep-rooted surgery. Deep, at the depth of the deepest surgery I know of. And mate, that has been a journey. So it was introduced to me, but it was also it was an attraction where I've manifested it into my reality / it was divine intervention. It was just it's one of those things you can go looking for it, but it finds you too.
I have to say it's pretty amazing because in my mind, as you're saying that out loud, I'm just looking on one side, you've got material success in the sense of like last 12 months, the podcast blew up, the buyer's agency was doing well. You've got people underneath you. People are wanting to get in contact with you. You're attracting these high performers and these quote unquote successful people into your life.
Yeah.
And then on the other hand, you've got this spiritual awakening.
Yeah.
It's like these two, and on the podcast, you're learning from incredible people. And then you've also got this teacher over here. It's like these two polarities.
Massive.
That are teaching you. And so I'm curious, like, did they fit together in that experience? Like, was it like a cog that was like, oof, and the teachings that you learn over here was represented here? Like how did that, how did it integrate?
Mate, it was interesting because it's like a Rubik's Cube. At times you're starting to get it, then other times you're completely lost.
This is on the experience, in the experience?
In both. Like,
okay, yeah.
I would learn something in the podcast realm, which I take an understanding of, then I'd go to the spiritual realm and be like, oh my God, what did I just learn? This guy's got no idea. And so there'd be times where the spiritual realm would reflect back the truth of the physical podcast realm.
That's cool.
And vice versa. There'd be sometimes in the podcast realm where I'd get an understanding that, actually he's made some success here and he was able to do that through this situation here. And maybe the spiritual realm didn't show me that path. Like I still got answers out of the podcast realm as opposed to the spiritual realm, but I've gained a deeper holistic understanding of success and reality through exploring both. And the biggest teacher out of the two was 100% the plant medicine, but I've learnt a lot about success and manifesting through the podcast realm when it comes to the 3D world of, manifesting. So,
yeah, it's interesting. I can imagine there's a world where like learning all this over here actually opened up the portal for you to step into this, because it's like you may have had an experience where you're like, I agree with a lot of it. Some of it isn't making sense. A lot, like I love these people, but some people it's like finding it hard to resonate, and it's kind of putting you into this world of questioning and deeper curiosity. And then it's like the plant medicine, which is like the king of answers,
literally
of wisdom, is like, hey, I'm over here and I've got something to share. And you're like, wow. Now I'm at this point where I'm like, I'm open to experience.
Yeah.
I love that.
100%. And that's the thing too. Like the more I was exploring this side, the more it made me want to explore the other side and vice versa. And now I'm at the stage where it's like, well, what's the next? As I've evolved, the last 12 months, I've completely evolved. Like the next phase for Dan in podcasting will not be what it was 12 months ago, because I've evolved so much and my innate desire and curiosity has completely changed. Who I want to learn from, what I want to understand. Like, because you get so many answers of truth through plant medicine, it's like, well, why am I listening to this guy tell distortions of reality? And at the end of the day, success
distortion of
like
your reality.
Well, for me, they're sharing stuff about what success is, which for me, their success isn't even what I desire success to be now. And how they've got there, the path that they've taken is not a path I'd want to take anyways. So it's like, well, why am I learning from people that at this stage in my journey, I don't have that curiosity to anymore, because it's, for me, a distortion of what I view reality to be.
What an amazing teacher that would be, though.
Massively.
Like I'm just even listening to what you're sharing and having, it's often like with client work, especially in my work, like they're actually teaching me so much at the same time. And I can imagine it's the same, right?
Yeah.
But one thing that I find interesting in the wellness world, I wouldn't say it's a phenomenon, but in the wellness world, I've been in the wellness industry for a long time now and have been obsessed with when I was a bodybuilder when I was younger, and then I was into biohacking, and then I was in this diet and that diet and this food, this routine. It's like I got obsessed with more. What's the next thing? What's the next routine? What's the next habit? What's the next biohack? How can I be more healthy? How can I be more aligned? How can I find more truth? How can I be more spiritual? There's all these things. have you got a gauge on when you feel like you're just seeking more and more and more? Because that could be kind of like the same as when people want more success to fill this void.
Yeah, you're on the same.
Is it the same? It's the same road.
Yeah, Matt, great thing to be aware. The awareness piece is like, well, there's a part where you expand your awareness, and then it's time to integrate that awareness. Like we talked about yesterday, you know, what do we need to remove, integrate, and then we can dial in on. So for me, it's like, okay, I can go do an experience, expand my awareness, come back, what do I need to integrate or remove from my environment. So at the moment, one of my processes now is conserving my energy. So I'm removing things out of my routine, like reducing the amount of training I do, reducing the intensity of my training, reducing certain chemicals I put on my body, reducing certain things so that I can conserve more energy, so that I can integrate that, and that will then manifest a different reality for me in 3-6 months time. And then it's time to go back and expand again. Because the concept of life and consciousness is we're always in infinite expansion, in perpetuity. Expansion is it's the part of life. It is almost the objective of life is continual expansion. But expansion is the value and benefit of expansion is limited when we're not integrating and change, like adapting that expansion into our reality to improve our life. Like if I'm just sitting there watching a movie and learning, but never take action, well, I'm just learning, I'm just getting entertained, versus I've learned something, I've applied it, I've seen a result.
Yeah.
Same principles.
Yeah. The integration, I think a lot of people try and find the optimization first, but forget the integration. So at least in the lens of which I view the world and which I like to share is like the elimination which you spoke to. So getting rid of the BS, getting rid of the fluff, the nonsense that may be in your life that's holding you back. Having space to then integrate new lessons, new teachings, new habits, new routines, new people. And then there's the opportunity to actually optimize those routines on top of it. That's really important. But one thing you said just then was like we're in infinite expansion. But I also believe that we also are one of the natural laws is to move towards chaos. That's actually what happens in this world. Move towards chaos. So when there's expansion, and if you look at the other law, which is like towards chaos, well, it makes sense then that there needs to be some structure and some rules per se around how to manage that. Does that make sense?
Well, mate, I've had experiences in ceremony with plant medicine where you get as clear as day image that we are as humans. For me, my experience was I'm a monkey, because we always forgetting. Like we've been shown something, but then I'll forget what I learned in 3 weeks time. So this not necessarily, it's not it's a need, but because we forget so often, the ability to be reminded is so valuable. And so the more we can be reminded and the more we can stay on path, the better things go. So that kind of relates to kind of what you were just sharing then. For me, it's just having this remembrance of like we continually need to be remembered. Reminded.
Yeah.
I forget what you just said, but I was meant to draw that back to a point. But
it's amazing. Actually, one of my teachers, Edward Dangerfield, when I was studying breathwork and the nervous system back in 2020, one of the teachings was we're unlearning and remembering. So rather than trying to learn how to breathe correctly, remember and unlearn the patterns, the maladaptive patterns that have been placed on us.
Yeah.
And I love that because, and I believe that's truly for at least for health within my life. It's actually about remembering that, I am resilient and my system can handle itself, and it's supposed to process, bacteria and viruses and, a little bit of dirt or it's okay. We're going to be fine. We're resilient creatures. So, and then there's also like the unlearning of unhealthy patterns and habits. So it's like, it's actually pretty simple, really, at least in how I like to view it. Simplify to amplify. That's it. As I learned from the big Danny Beardall. So back to sort of where's next, like where do you find yourself wanting to spend time on a business front?
I'm really inspired now to continue building a life by design. So what does that mean for Dan? I'm inspired to now travel. So for me, I've experienced travel where when I go to a certain specific location like Peru, I gain expanded consciousness from being in that land. I absorb the energy of the land, the historical intelligence that lays in the land. I get different understandings, downloads, experiences. So I'm very inspired to continue traveling to different areas to expand myself and learn and develop different cultural understandings so that I can come back to myself and live a better quality of life. And I enjoy the process of travel. So for me, my business is a vehicle to facilitate that expansion. It's a vehicle to provide financial time freedom for me to do that which inspires me in the short term. Part of that exploration in traveling and expanding my consciousness will involve interviewing people from time to time, having these interesting, intricate conversations with people that are on the similar path, that are trying to build a life by design and just understand their own Rubik's Cube of their own life. Like, what are some of their own challenges they've got to work through and expand on? And that's what interests me. So for me, I love the art of business and the science of it, that we can have a vehicle that can create financial time freedom for us to then go and do the things that we would love to do. And that's what, for me, business is. It's not needing to write $1 million to go in at the awards night. It's not needing to be this, because it's like, that's not why for me. I'm inspired by the ability to have freedom and travel and live in the areas I want to live and move to where I want to be and eat the quality of foods or not foods I want to eat. If I want to fast, if I want to eat, cool. Yeah.
If you had to start over today knowing what you know now,
Yeah.
whether it be the podcast or in business, what would be the key thing that you do differently?
Mate, if I knew what I know now, I'd love to see what I would do, because I have so much more self-esteem and like security that I feel like I would do things like, I wonder what that would be that I would be naturally drawn to, not drawn to because I need to be drawn to it. So I don't know what that would be, but I know now I've got a lot of momentum in certain areas that kind of fuels that. So I don't know what I'd be doing different but I'd say I'd be just doing things that were more because I'm just being Dan, not because I need to be anything or do anything. And just being Dan naturally would expand me at a greater rate.
If one of the listeners here or the viewers, wherever they may be, are thinking, I want to be more like Dan. I want to have big triceps like Dan and be spiritual.
Yeah.
No, but if they're like, look, I want to get in touch with myself. I want to know myself better. And again, we're kind of getting back into this teaching role here of like how to be successful, but how to get to know yourself. But I'm just curious, like, what was the single most important thing that you did that allowed you to get more in touch with yourself?
2 is one, being self-employed and starting a business forces you to have more boundaries, be more like it forced me to go on this path, because for me to succeed, I had to become better. I can't just go out drinking. I can't just stay out late. I can't eat these bad foods because it affects my performance here. And as a result of having my own business and podcasts and all that, it made me change certain habits and behaviors. So one of the things for me, starting a business has been a very good life growth for me. And I recommend anyone that has desires to improve, starting a business is always a great vehicle. But again, it's coming back to yourself. A business vehicle may not be the spiritual path for you. It may be being an artist or being a creative or working for somebody. But then the next biggest thing for me in the spiritual path has been plant medicine. But again, plant medicine was a byproduct of Tony Robbins, personal development, training, elite, like ultra running, 10-day meditations, like all this prep so I could be able to do the plant medicine. So yeah, plant medicine is the kit, like the Ferrari, but I had to start in the Toyota. So, but yeah, the 2 ultimate things for me has been ceremony, plant medicine, and a business.
I love that.
And then now it's relationship, intimate relationship, and a partner is one of the biggest for me now. Is just awesome.
I guess, we can finish up if you'd like, but last question that I would love to just understand from you is, what would you say your identity is?
My identity. So the best answer I'd love to give is that I try not to identify with anything. Like, I'm just here now living life, experiencing this human experience as Dan. I'm a conscious soul being that's here in a human experience, and my human experience is a manifestation of all the learnings and teachings I've developed as a human in my mind, and that's also my ancestors that have different DNA structures and traumas or events that I get to have have made this human body. So the mind and the body combined together give me this human experience, but I'm coming through the lens of a spiritual being. So for me, I just try not to identify with anything because I am everything. But the reality is I will identify by things. I will say I'm the podcast Dan, I'm the real estate guy. From time to time, but the more you can just be Dan doing what Dan wants, like just be life. You are here now, like experiencing. You don't have to be anything. You can be what you want, like within reason,
Yeah, I love that. And the reason I ask that question, because a lot of my clients struggle with this idea of identity. It's like, who am I without real estate? Who am I without being this high performing person? And so, and I've heard a lot of agents, in the podcast sort of identify, as that as well, but are actually kind of confused underneath it all, is what I see. And it's actually a little sad sometimes.
That's so sad, man.
And I have so much compassion. I'm still figuring out my identity, but have more of a grasp on what I love and what I live by, my values, my core values, which determines, how I show up. But the reason I asked you is because I wanted to hear you say that.
Yeah. And mate, the reality is I'm not that smart. Like, what I think my identity should be or could be, the universe knows a better path. Like, for example, I've had some challenges in a certain genre of my life which was draining a lot of my energy. And for me to set boundaries or walk away from that felt like I was giving up on my dream. It felt like I was detaching myself from all this hard work and process. But the minute I gave myself space to allow for the new and have a bit of faith in what was to come, mate, as soon as I did that, bang, everything opens up, it flows again. I'm in bliss, joy, abundance. And you don't even consider, like, what I thought at the time was me giving up on my dream and all this wasted energy, learnings, money, resources. You don't even consider when you're on this side of the fence because you're just feeling great. It doesn't even matter. It's like when you've maybe wasted money on a pair of jeans you've overspent, but 3 years go past, you don't even remember the jeans you bought. Do you know what I mean? And so, like, when it comes to the identity piece, like if you're in a situation now where you're feeling disconnected, uninspired, like I had an agent call me on Saturday, Dan, I'm in a bit of a rut. I don't know. I feel like I'm on this grind 6 days a week, 12-hour days. Like, help. He's feeling stuck. And mate, as soon as you give yourself permission to disidentify from this and have the ability to identify in whatever it is you want to be, as soon as you give yourself that space, boom, it'll all change and just flow again. But until you give yourself permission to do that, you're going to not have the ability to flow. You're going to be in this resistance battle.
I mean, it sounds great in theory.
Yeah.
Right? And you've done this. You've walked the path. However, if I put myself in that agent shoes, and it's not too dissimilar to stories that I have. I put myself in that agent shoes, and I'm like, I'm in the grind. I've just had 7 open homes on a Saturday. I've just worked 5 days. I go home, my partner's like not happy with me, the kids are screaming. I've only got 1 day to switch off, but my phone's still getting blown up by my vendors that are pissed off with me, because that property didn't sell, whatever it might be. And then Monday starts again. Like, how do you, it's like, it's all nice to say, like, just disconnect from it, but how actually do you do that?
Yeah.
Like, how do you actually create space from an environment that is actually constricting?
You just start by starting. Nothing good happens fast, and there's the power of just small steps. Literally. Nothing good happens fast. You don't have to quit your job. You can just start by 5 minutes a day breathing.
And that's when you asked me the question yesterday, what's your favorite routine or hack or thing? I said, it's just walking in the morning, first thing with my family in the sun on the beach. Luckily, I'm on the beach and I can do that in the sun. But that's enough for me to sort of give me that reprieve, that space. And I call it white space. It's just enough space for this to just open up. I like the sun to shine. I've spoken about this before. And it's symbolic of not just walking on the beach with my family, but it's symbolic of actually space and time, a pause, a pattern interrupt.
Yeah.
and that's, I believe, is the single most important thing for these agents and business owners, entrepreneurs, is like, how can you find a pattern interrupt in your day?
Yeah.
And start small with one step. I think it's like absolutely
100%.
important, and that can then breed into an impetus of inspiration for, I need to go and do this thing, or I need to sit more, I need to be here, I need to go and do that Vipassana, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
But there's space
100%.
to breathe.
It's good to breathe.
We need to do breath work again, and we haven't done
100%. I'd love to, man.
that. I believe that would
Always
be,
up.
that's super powerful. Is there anything else you'd love to share?
What I'd love to share. I think for me, like what I'd love to stand for or represent would just be, life can be hard. Like life can be unfair. Life is life. But the beauty of life is that there's always the ability to evolve. There's always the ability for things to get better. And for me, with my tragedies, and yeah, maybe I was living a life in flight or flight, fear, anxiousness, stress, a life that I was living out of not my true desires, but out of a desire to fill a void for maybe 20 plus years. But there's light up, I had that experience for 20 years, and you think, fuck, is it ever going to change? There's always the ability to evolve and change. There's always something out there. There is an experience out there for you to liberate. It doesn't matter what situation you're in. There's always an experience out there for you. You've just got to hold to that and believe and just never give up. Because I guarantee you, I've experienced it. There's always an experience out there for you that's beyond your comprehension.
One of my coaches gifted me this phrase. It's, you can't lose what's meant for you. And I love that, because it's the idea of faith.
Yeah. You can't lose what's meant for you, and you can always deal a card. There's never a card you dealt that you can't handle.
Yeah. I love that. There's always another way. So anyone that's out there going through a rough time, rough patch, maybe you're on the grind, maybe you're having a struggle with a partner, maybe it's just a conversation you need to have at work, maybe you're in the wrong career, whatever it might be, there's always another way.
And mate, fuck, at the end of the day, half of the time, it's just a mirror.
What is it trying to teach you?
What is it trying to teach you? And it comes back to yourself.
Yeah, I love that. Deeper listening.
Mate, do you mind if I ask you a question?
Depends which question.
What's been, out of everything we've discussed today, what's kind of stood out to you and pricked your ears up, or inspired you, gained some curiosity, or was a part that you're like, yeah?
So for me, I believe that success is actually the transfer of confidence.
The transfer of confidence.
And it comes in the way of conviction. And what inspired me was hearing about the whole journey on your spiritual path, and the passion that you have for developing your inner compass, and actually the conviction to take action towards it. That's what that fires me up, because it's no different from me. There was an experience in real estate that I had. I felt like my internal world wasn't in alignment. I had a psychedelic experience, as you know. That was the impetus for maybe there's a different way of living. It has to be a different way of living. And then I took radical action. And the world, at the time, the universe was it was teaching me so much. It was a really hard experience. Anxiety, I felt like I was almost depressed, and life was a little dark. And as you say, there's always a way through. There's always another way. There's never a card that you can't handle. The universe, it rewarded me by taking action in a different direction. So, and it was actually the action of most resistance. For me to leave real estate, it was symbolic of leaving an identity. It was symbolic of leaving a version of myself that I had such a tight grasp on. Yet the moment that I decided to leave was the moment that I was rewarded. And it was liberating. Oh my God, I can breathe. It's like coming up from a deep, dive.
Can I ask you a question on that? When you're in real estate, I don't know what your goal was in real estate. Maybe it was to write $1 million, whatever. Was that goal you had in real estate versus where you are now? Like, for most people in real estate that have this goal that they're working towards and feel like maybe they're going to be a failure if they pull back, like, was your current life now better than maybe that goal you had in mind?
Well, I didn't really know I truly didn't know what that meant, that goal. It was actually imposed on me by the people that I was being mentored by. And it was a financial goal. I didn't really understand, like, what is that $500,000? It was a $500,000 goal. I think I was 23 at the time, and it was 500 grand, but I didn't really know what that meant. I didn't really know what that allowed me to experience. I didn't actually understand on a deeper level, like, why am I even doing that? It was more because I had to pay back a debt from my family and I felt like a fucking failure. And this is the logical next goal. That was it, right? And so, like, is my life better now? Like, of course. But do I actually... but it's funny because it's double-edged sword, because I actually look back at my life and I look how disciplined I was, how committed I was, and how passionate I was about real estate at the time. Like, this is why I say, like, there's small contradictions here, because I loved it and I hated it. It was like both, right? And so I was so dedicated, disciplined, and passionate about, like, being better in that industry, that I sometimes look back and be like, oh, I want to adopt. I'd like to adopt a lot of what I was doing there now. And sometimes it's harder now because it is my own business, and because I have the resource to be able to travel and more freedom, it's actually a little bit more difficult. So I need actually more structure and probably rigidity and rules like I did there. So I look at it and I'm like, oh, I really love that. However, why I was doing it was not clear. And so that's actually part of the reason that I'm doing the work that I'm doing, is to be able to show that, like, if I had have known what I know now, right, and the lessons, I'm not saying I know everything, but I spent a bit of time thinking about self-development and the health space and optimization. If I had have applied myself for what I know now on this idea of energy and renewal back then, I probably would still be in real estate. And I'd be doing really well. And I probably would be enjoying my life far more, to the point where I didn't have to leave real estate. And that's part of, like, what sometimes I think is missed when it comes to my story, is that I didn't leave. Like, I actually enjoyed real estate. I wasn't living well.
Yeah.
I wasn't living with intention. I wasn't clear on why I was taking the action that I was taking. And so therefore I was living someone else's life. Does that make sense? But now I'm like, oh man, life would have been really good. Could have made a bunch of money. Could have had great holidays. And I could have been, like, the pressure would have been far less on myself. Do you know what I mean? And I would have still been able to create more. So it's an interesting, like, that the reflection that I have around who I used to be and how I used to act versus who I am now and how I act now, like, it's bittersweet. Does that make sense? It's possible to have both. Is my, and it's my lived experience, and also from clients, like, it's possible. You don't have to work more to be more, earn more. You don't. You just have to be smarter. Know yourself a little better. Make more aligned decisions. Be more intentional. And I say that with you because that's the truth.
Love it, man.
Should we wrap it?
We should wrap it. That was I've enjoyed it. Thank you for...
Thanks, brother.
Thank you. I appreciate it.